So I'm very happy to introduce today's webinar. The topic is on generative AI, and we're going to be talking about some intellectual property trends as well as a commercialization spotlight. Just to let you know, this webinar is brought to you by Innovation Partnerships. So we like to call ourselves the University of Michigan's Innovation Engine. We help researchers to commercialize their innovations, and we also help researchers to launch startups. And we have some lovely startup researchers on the call today. In the past 2 years, we've launched 53 startups, so we're really proud of that. So if you have an idea that you're interested in getting in touch with us about, please let us know, and we're happy to help you in your research endeavors as well. We help researchers kind of in three main areas. We help with corporate research alliances, both with industry partnering with researchers and then researchers partnering with industry. We also help with licensing. So after the research is done, if researchers have invented something, we would help patent it and bring it from the lab to the marketplace. And then also sometimes the best way to get that done is to form a new startup company. So we help with ventures as well. So those are kind of the main areas that our office supports, as well as putting on things like this webinar series. Our next topic in the series I'm very excited about is on extended reality, so augmented reality, mixed reality, and virtual reality. It will be in the winter term, so please keep a lookout on your emails for notifications on our next topic. All of our recordings in the series are available on our website, which we can send out to everyone when we send out the recording for this session. And with that, I'm happy to introduce our amazing speakers that we have for today. So at the beginning half of the webinar, we're going to be learning about intellectual property trends from Brian Doughty, who's an associate with the Office of General Counsel here at the University of Michigan, as well as Randy Rueth, who's a partner at Marshall, Gerstein Bourn. And then in the second half of the webinar, we're going to transition to understanding and learning from some researchers who have done the whole process. So we have Perry Samson, who's an Arthur F. Thurneaux Professor Emeritus of Climate and Space Sciences. He is a co-founder of Learning Clues, so we'll get to learn about that later. And then we'll also hear from Elliot Soloway, who's also an Arthur F. Thurneaux Professor of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, and he is the co-director of the Center for Digital Curricula. So with that, I will conclude my speaking part of this webinar. Just so all of our speakers know, we will be timing you, and we're hoping to keep everybody to 10 minutes and then have time for questions afterwards. So if you do kind of start nearing that time limit, myself or my colleague Ashwathi will kind of politely cut you off. So thanks so much for coming to speak with us today, and I'm sure that all the participants are just so grateful to learn from everyone's knowledge. Brian, I'm handing it over to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tina. Let's see. Screen here. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. A few of the things that I'm going to be talking about today, I'm going to sort of set the table and talk about some general definitions of AI and the technology that we're talking about. I'm also going to give an update on a presentation that we gave several months ago about terms of service, specifically related to ChatGPT. And then I will also be talking about a few of the University of Michigan internal AI tools that we have at our disposal. And I'll wrap it up with talking about a couple of litigation cases that relate to AI and how the legal landscape around a lot of AI issues is being shaped right now. So yeah, when we're talking about generative AI here, we're broadly speaking about two different types of technology. The first is these the large language model chatbots. That's your ChatGPT, your Bard, your Copilot, where the input that you give is text-based and the output that you get is also text-based. It can be, simple conversational style, like with a ChatGPT, or it could be the output from it could be source code as with a tool like Copilot. The other type is a text-to-image AI art system. The most popular examples are Stable Diffusion and Doughty, and that's where you give a text prompt to the system and it outputs an image back to you that responds to that text prompt. In both of these examples, the AI model learns patterns and structure of its response based on the input training data that is used to train the system, and then it generates new data that has similar characteristics to the data that it was trained on. The overarching advice that I've given to people in the past, as far as how you should use these tools and whether you should use these tools, is to trust but verify. Right? These can be important tools to getting started on an idea or helping with a project that you're working on. But there's no guarantee about the accuracy of the information that you get back, and there's no guarantee of freedom to use the outputs from these systems. So use them as a tool, but verify the output to make sure that you can actually use it in the way that you want to use it. Now, in the previous presentation that I did about terms of service for ChatGPT, there were a few main points that I'll run through here just to refresh our memory. As between the service provider, like ChatGPT, and the user owns the output from most of these large language models. Now, that doesn't mean that you are free to use it. Copyright laws still apply. And so if the output were to contain, copyrighted material, it doesn't, the fact that ChatGPT says that you own the output doesn't mean that it's free from any of those other laws that could apply. Now, the provider, in this case, ChatGPT, also retains a license to use your inputs and the outputs to provide and maintain the services, and also to, in most cases, improve its services. There is one caveat there, that if you're using certain levels of ChatGPT's services, for example, if you're implementing their API as opposed to the web-based version, your inputs and outputs may not be subject to being used to improve the services. And the final point that I wanted to review from that last presentation is there's no requirement that ChatGPT keeps the information that you input into the system as confidential. And that can be very important and could have ramifications for patentability of an invention that's made using or in part one of these generative AI tools, because it could be considered a public disclosure. Now, these terms of service are constantly evolving, and there's actually a new set of terms of service specifically for ChatGPT that's going into effect in December. And there's a few points from that revision that I thought were relevant to this community. I talked about how the user owns the output for the inputs and outputs for the generative AI systems with respect to ChatGPT. They've made it more explicit that the user retains ownership of the input and owns the output. The difference is slight, but they're emphasizing that you, as the user, you retain ownership of whatever you owned to begin with. So, for example, if you put in a copyrighted piece of work into one of these systems, that doesn't, the terms of service for ChatGPT don't wash away those copyright rights. You maintain the rights that you had to that work to the extent that you had them in the first place. And then the assignment of rights to the output, they've made it explicit in the terms of service that only extends to the output insofar as it is not the same as someone else's output. So let's say Tina and I both put in the same query to one of these systems and actually got the same output. I own it with respect to ChatGPT, but I don't own it with respect to Tina. Another change is that now any user, and not just API users, can opt out of having their content used to train the models. Though they say that if you opt out of your information being able to train the models, that may impact your utility of the services. There's also a change. They're emphasizing users providing accurate user information when they sign up for the service, and a prohibition on password sharing. This is important because if whoever is using the account when a violation of the terms of service happens could get banned from using the service. So they want to know who they're banning. So just keep that in mind if you're sharing access to your account with somebody else. And the final one is that accounts made with corporate domains could be transferred to the organization's business account. So if you're using it in an individual capacity, make sure to use an individual email address and credentials. Now, U of M has recently released several tools for the university community to use. I'm going to go over the three main tools here. U of M GPT is the first one, and think of this as sort of a private version of ChatGPT, the way you think of using it online. Basically, there are snapshot versions of several models: GPT 4.0, Llama 2.7b, GPT 3.5, and these are snapshot. They're not the most up-to-date version of each of these models. They're a snapshot in time trained on a certain amount of data that was present at the time that snapshot was taken. One of the benefits of using this system is that the U of M GPT does not engage in training the model. It's a static version of the AI model, and it does not share user-specific data to improve the AI model. So it's an in-house version. Similar to ChatGPT, though, use this as a tool, trust but verify. Don't just take an output as something that you can actually use. Use it as a tool. But there is less concern about public disclosure because it is not part of the actual ChatGPT system. It is internal to the university. But the logs and conversations that you have with the tool, like other documents within the university, are subject to FOIA. The next tool is called U of M Maisie, and this is if you want to use one of those AI models, so GPT 4.0, GPT 3.5, but you want to train it on your own set of data and use that to glean insights from your own set of data. You can use U of M Maisie. It's only trained on the data provided by the user. Data can be sourced from U of M Google, U of M Canvas, web links, or a Dropbox, and you can adjust the temperature of these models to either give more creative outputs or a more conservative response. Like U of M GPT, for right now, this service is free through the end of this year. But for U of M Maisie in 2024 and beyond, there will be monthly billing via shortcode. The third tool is U of M GPT Toolkit. This is if the user wants to actually develop their own AI model. So U of M Maisie uses existing models with your own data. U of M GPT Toolkit is about actually developing your own AI model. This tool requires consultation with ITS AI services team and also contains a cost.
Okay.
Am I pretty close?
Yeah, you're at 10 minutes.
Okay.
About 2 more minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. I'll go over these two cases very quickly. The GitHub Copilot case is a lawsuit that was brought by several coders against GitHub, Microsoft, and OpenAI. And it's about the GitHub Copilot tool, which is trained on billions of lines of publicly available code, mostly open source code. And the issue at play here is whether or not Copilot has to comply with the open source license provisions on from the code that is used to train the system. Several claims were dismissed from this case, but the central claims are still alive. And as of September, as a way to mitigate the damages in this case, Microsoft has pledged to defend customers that face copyright lawsuits on the basis of outputs from the Copilot product. So not resolved yet, but a case to keep an eye on. The other case, Anderson versus Stability AI, this has to do with text-to-image generators. A group of artists brought a copyright infringement suit, and they're accusing several companies of both infringing their copyrights in training their programs, and also infringing their copyrights based on the outputs of their programs. The central issue in this case, or at this point, is going to be whether or not the plaintiff can show a substantial similarity between their own artwork and the things that are being output by the AI tool. So another one that is not resolved, but to keep an eye on with respect to artists' rights with respect to AI.
Thank you, Brian. So next up is Randy.
Great, thank you. Let me get it up here. Do you see my slides there?
Yes, we see them.
Perfect, thank you. So thank you, Tina. Thank you, everyone at the University of Michigan for letting me speak on this topic today. Looking forward to it. It's a hot topic in my area of law. So there's lots to discuss, but we'll try to go fairly quickly here. A few of the topics we'll be hitting today. Will be the IP landscape considerations, the human inventor, the human author, use of ChatGPT outputs, and risk of use. So starting with IP landscape and some considerations. Mainly in the IP area, we'll be talking about patent law, copyright law, and trade secrets. We'll try to touch on all three of those in a very short amount of time. But talking about the human inventor and the human author, touching on patents first. This is probably a little bit more cut and dried than copyrights, but we'll touch on it anyway, just to make sure it's clear for everyone that in the U.S. we have it codified that the term inventor is defined as an individual or individuals who invented or discovered the subject matter of the invention. And this was also affirmed last August of 2022, so a little over a year ago, in the Thaler v. Vidal Fed Circuit decision, which affirmed a USPTO decision. There was an applicant, Thaler, who submitted an application listing AI as the sole inventor, and the Patent Office rejected it, and the Fed Circuit affirmed that decision. What it did, though, is it raised the possibility of AI-assisted inventorship, and that it could be joint inventorship. It didn't decide on that actual aspect. So essentially, the AI as a creative machine is, still an open issue. And that decision, and so after that decision and up till today, for the time being, one can assume that a patent application listing ChatGPT or any other LLM or generative AI as a sole inventor would be denied, as was the case in Thaler. Where a human contributed, though, to the conception of a claim while using ChatGPT, then perhaps a USPTO would allow joint inventorship, i.e. human inventor and ChatGPT combined, as the human inventor requirement would be met. This is pretty consistent worldwide. All the major patent offices, all the major countries with major patent offices, Europe, Japan, whatnot, have had similar decrees that this is kind of the same. So this is pretty universal. It seems pretty steady. We haven't had any decisions since over a year ago addressing this issue. At the end of this, I'll touch on one thing that could change this. We'll have to see coming in the future. Copyright Office is a little bit more nuanced in terms of their directions, but for right now, it's pretty clear. In the office's view, it's well established that copyright can protect only material that is a product of human creativity. So most fundamentally, the term author, which is used in both the Constitution and the Copyright Act, excludes non-humans. This includes monkeys from a decision a while back where a monkey could not be an artist and get a copyright on it, something that was created by a monkey. So a very common question that gets asked is material generated by ChatGPT or any other large language model copyrightable? So when an AI technology determines that the expressive elements of its output, the generated material, is not the product of human authorship, so therefore it would not be copyrightable. So without human authorship, the work of generated material or outputs is not copyrightable itself. When does generated material, i.e. the output, become copyrightable? So this is probably where I get more questions from clients, and also I think some of the registrants submitted a couple of questions on this topic. And the lawyer answers it does depend. It's a gray area. So a work containing AI-generated material and sufficient human authorship by selecting, arranging, or modifying the output in a sufficiently creative way, amounting to, and here's the legal words, a modicum of creativity, that could be copyrightable, and probably would be copyrightable. The U.S. Copyright Office did issue some directions several months ago stating that any copyright applicant who is using one of these models to generate work that they're trying to register as a copyright, that they actually distinguish or delineate what aspects of it were created by the human and which aspects were created by the algorithm or the machine. So that's kind of the state. And this is pretty consistent actually worldwide again in other major countries and their copyright laws. So focusing on inputs just for a minute, this is pretty simple. In general, while some prompts are essentially what I'm saying is some inputs could be copyrightable if it's a human actually creating something very unique that in itself could be copyrightable. Putting it into, so if you're creating this yourself, it's an original work of authorship. It's putting it into a model is not going to change the fact that it would be copyrightable. So that's the input on the input side. Risk of use. Brian touched a little bit on this, but there's been a lot of copyright infringement litigation with the U.S. and somewhat a more litigious society. The rest of the world is sort of looking to see how U.S. courts are going to handle this. We're probably further ahead than any other country. Brian talked about a couple of these. I'm going to talk just briefly about Getty Images because I think that's a pretty interesting one. The partners I speak with, in this case, Getty accused Stability AI of copying 12 million images from its database to build a competing database. So the defendants, of course, will argue fair use. What I think is interesting here, though, and what makes this a much stronger case with a higher likelihood of success, in my opinion, and I think most people agree that most my partners agree that Getty's probably got a higher likelihood of success than a lot of the other plaintiffs we've seen who have filed copyright infringement suits against these large language models. Is that Getty licensed its images and metadata to other AI art generators. So they've shown in the past that they're willing to do that for a fee, of course. And therefore, there's arguments that Stability AI being able to do this for free, not paying a license or royalty would be unfair. And the other thing that other point that cuts in Getty's favor here is that the images were carefully assembled by Getty and accurately labeled. So it took a lot of effort, a lot of human work to do that. So that's what actually leads to the benefits and the superiority of their database. And on this litigation, the focus is where it should be at the input stage of ingestion of the copyrighted images to train the algorithm. This case is in the district court in Delaware. It's extremely backlogged. I don't think we're going to get any actual decision out of this for well over a year. I looked at the docket yesterday, and nothing's been done in the last 4 or 5 months other than a lot of wrangling over discovery. So it's going to be a while before a decision comes from this case, but it'll be interesting to follow. If you haven't seen their complaint, this is an example of what Getty is concerned about and complaining about. On the left here, you see that this is one of the images from their database. And on the right, you can see an image that came from Stability AI. So it includes the Getty Images watermark here. Some of the limbs look a little bit odd. The faces look a little bit ghoulish. So you can see why, for sure, why Getty would have a concern about this. Another one, which is probably even more ghoulish. You see these women soccer players here, and their faces look a little bit scary. So just some examples of what they're generating and what Getty's concerns would be. So it's impossible to know as an attorney what the future is going to be, where this is going to end up. But it kind of comes down to your and your entity's willingness to assume some risk. You could look at for some analogies. Authors Guild versus Google. So this was the Second Circuit in New York held that Google manually scanning millions of copyrighted books without a license was fair use. You could consider maybe it is a transformative output. The U.S. Supreme Court recently in the Google versus Oracle case, they held that Google's use of portions of Java code to create its Android operating system was fair use. So that cuts, that's on the one side if you want to take a little bit of risk. If you're a little more risk averse, you can think about if you can try to bring yourself back 20 some years ago and think about sharing of copyrighted music. And, the people back at that time thought it was fine, but now we look at it and say, of course, that's copyrighted. Those songs are copyrightable and we can't, freely share those and distribute those without some sort of royalty going back to the artist. That was a Metallica versus Napster case. And another decision is this decision where out of the FTC, where it a company used facial recognition algorithms without consent of the people that they were running this on, and they had to go back and essentially remove all of that information. Some risk of use. Actually, Brian touched on this. and it's a big concern. It's probably the biggest concern that I would, want to make sure that everyone's aware of, that information that is put into these large language models or these inputs, unless you're using the private instantiation of the tool, that would probably be considered a public disclosure and could potentially start the clock ticking, or potentially bar you from being able to get a patent. So if you're at the university, make sure you're using that account, that private instantiation, and you're not using your private one, and you're not accessing it accidentally, because that could have serious consequences. Same thing with trade secrets. Trade secrets have to be kept secret. And if you put something into a language model and it's not one of the private instantiations, you very likely would destroy that trade secret. Nothing can be done to recover that. Can't unring that bell.
Randy?
Yes. Am I at time? Yeah. So just one more slide here, just President Biden's executive order. It did touch on patents and copyrights. It gave the Patent Office 4 months to give some guidance and recommendations on inventorship, on patent eligibility. It's giving 9 months. It does also ask for copyright registration information or guidance and recommendation from the Copyright Office. And one of the questions that did come up, I just want to touch base on is these types of innovations that incorporate ChatGPT and other large language models. They are definitely patentable. It's not, we're not patenting the idea in itself. We're usually patenting a practical application of that idea. So I think I'm at time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy. So next up is the commercialization section of this webinar, and I'll hand it over to Perry to talk about his commercialization journey.
Oh, thank you. I'm always a bit intimidated to be following a lawyer. And so I'm going to be very careful about what I say, because what I've been doing with the team at the university is trying to come up with uses of GPT that would help in the classroom for a couple different reasons. And I'm Kevin Collins-Thompson, and I have been working to create some new technologies. And at the end of this talk, I'm going to invite anyone in here who is a university instructor to take it for a test drive. The challenges we're after here are that many students will come to the university ill-prepared for the study that's required. And also many have jobs and consequently have, let's say, less time to really study. So the whole hope here was, how do we deal with the time constraints that students have? Not only traditional students, but the students who are coming back to our professional schools to take executive education courses. They have, jobs, and they have families, and they have limited time, and flexibility that many of these people would like to meet with their instructor, but their instructor is not available when they're available. And consequently, they don't get the mentoring that they would like. On top of that, we've got instructors themselves who have their own challenges. And the elephant in the room is that, is there accountability? You're getting responses from these generative AI systems. Are we equitably able to use this technology for all students? Or is this just going to be limited to a few, those who are the more active students? Privacy. Are we able to navigate privacy in our system? And how do we protect our intellectual property? The teachings in our courses and such, we don't necessarily want them floating back into the large language models, as Brian talked about. So what we've done is try to navigate all that by building a whole new system where what we do is everything that's in the student's ecosystem of learning. So you may have videos for your course from Kane. You might have them from Zoom or YouTube or Panopto, Kaltura. We don't care. We ingest those videos into our system. We don't ingest the videos themselves. We ingest the transcripts, and we're able to extract from the videos what was visually presented. We, with the permission of the instructor, we also extract from the LMS any documents you've made available to your students. And we can even connect a textbook in your class so that when a student asks a question, here's the key part of this, is that the responses to the student's questions are based solely on either what you have said and presented in class and or documents that you've made available or the textbook you've chosen. And the only people who ever get access to that are your students and you. And everything that goes into this with our prompt engineering is restricted so that the material is not leaked back into the large language model to protect your intellectual property. So the whole goal here is that I'm, not all, Elliot's not lazy, but I am, and I don't like extra work. And so the whole concept is that we want to be able to provide students sort of an extra TA, the ability to ask questions 24/7 and get responses that would reflect the things the ways I might respond to my students, but probably with a bit more grace. We developed 4 technologies so far, and the one I want to feature here is called Course GPT. Course GPT is a system where students can, again, it's accumulated everything that's gone on in your course up to this point. And the student now can ask a question. They ask, in this class, my weather class is how do you estimate relative humidity knowing temperature and dew point, and it's come back with an answer here. But you'll note that in the answer is citations, so that each sentence in the answer gives a citation for how was that sentence generated, what information from the class was used to generate that answer. And it will take you and open up the video from the class videos to the moment that was used to help generate that part of the answer. Likewise, if you have a document in the LMS, it would take you to that document. And if you had a textbook, it would actually open the textbook to the page that helped give that answer for the course. So again, it constrains the answers to the things that you would give. It does give far more graceful answers than I've got some examples I won't share now for time, but we would like other instructors to take this for a test drive and use it in their course themselves first, and for maybe a week or so, and see if it's giving answers that you think are helpful. And once you're happy with it, then if you want, we can release it to your class. And the way you do that is to get your camera out, or either write down the link here. The Learning Clues link will take you to a page where you can put your information in for your course, or just take a picture of the QR code, same thing. The idea is that we will then start indexing your class videos. And if you want us to, we can also index what's on your Canvas site. The data is only available to you and your students once you release it. And you can stop this at any time. This is an experiment. We're funded by the National Science Foundation to try to make this into a product that can be useful nationwide. But here at Michigan, of course, is our test bed. So if you're open to doing that, please do. Also, we work with many on campus here, and you probably or may know Dr. Chuck from the School of Information. He's got a fantastic course he runs on Coursera for teaching students how to learn Python. And there's a link here that also you could write down, and that you can go try this yourself. And assuming I can still have a second here, I am going to take you live. One never tries to show live demos. It's just a silly thing to do. But here, this is in his Python for Everyone course. He's got 100,000 students in this course. So here's a question: what is a tuple and how can it be used? Now, this is a question I've had my whole life, but and it goes to what it's doing now is looking through all the 87 videos in his course and the documents he has compiled for the course. And it comes back here with an answer about the tuple is a data structure in Python, blah, 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 blah. And you can see here that each of the parts of the answer here are qualified by a a video, a link here, and I'm going to click on one of them here and bring it up, and it'll take us then to the spot in this class.
The other thing that's interesting about tuples, and we've actually sort of seen this, is that you can put a tuple that includes variables on the left side of the assignment.
So imagine in your own course, the students now 24/7, 2 in the morning, whenever they have a question about your course, they will be able to go and ask those questions. So I encourage you to consider coming back and where'd it go? and taking it for a test drive. And I cede then any extra time I might have to Elliot, because I know he's got even better things to talk about.
Awesome. Perry, you're early. So Elliot, you get 2 extra minutes and it's all yours.
Oh my God, Perry, thank you. Thank you, brother. Well, I'm going to talk about young kids, grades 3 and 5, and how we are trying to help support the teachers and the kids. Now, we're focused on 3 to 5 today, but as you'll see, we're going to talk about a little further high school, the world. I have 3 undergraduates, Ari Singer, Ari Sherman, and Arnav Mittal, who've been working with me on this for about 3 months now. And so we're at the really only the beginning stages of it. This is what an elementary school teacher does, 54 hours per week. Now, I know college professors, we do more. I got it, right? And what they're finding is elementary schools teachers spend 10 hours a week grading. If you ask a teacher, what's the one thing they don't want to do? Grading. I mean, I got piles that I got to grade. And here's an interesting quote. Grading is a big part of every teacher's life. It is so big that some teachers find themselves lugging home a book bag stuffed with papers every night. Teacher retention is one of the biggest problems we're having in K-12. This issue is one of the problems with teacher retention. When teachers spend inordinate amounts of time grading, we rob ourselves of the time that we need to teach. Teachers want to teach. Yes, grading is important. Absolutely. For the kids, it's got to be. But we're teachers because we want to teach. So we got to give the teachers back that time. So going one step further, virtually every state has a state test. High stakes test. In Michigan, it's called the M-STEP, Michigan Student Test of Educational Progress. Now, this is a screen capture from their website. Notice the pencil. Notice the pencil on the grading sheet. Okay, I won't go into it. And the Department of Ed, they have for math and ELA. ELA is English Language Arts, basically English, right? And there are 2 standardized tests, one for math and one for ELA. These are huge standardized tests. Here is an example of what the kids have to do for 3rd grade. They read this story and then write something. The rhinoceros was the grumpiest animal in all of Africa. Oh, give me a break. No, that doesn't say that. But he was, right? So here's a story. And then what the kids have to do, the bird is important to the story. Write an essay explaining how the rhinoceros changes because of the actions of the bird. And so here's a student response. And then a human person would give that feedback. There's some spelling mistakes, okay, but it takes approximately 15 minutes to do every one of these essays that a student writes. Now multiply that by millions, and you can see the problem. This is going to get you upset. If you look at the state of Michigan, and this is true across the country, look at the curves keep going down. Proficiency in ELA, in language, in English, across 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is where the tests are, has been going down. COVID only enhanced it. But look at 3rd grade. I mean, heavens. 4th is holding their own, but 7th, kaboof. I mean, what they're finding, for example, is children in elementary school are 2 years behind in reading. 2 years. How are those kids going to catch up? That's another story. And look at this one. M-STEP, 3rd grade, lowest mark in 9 years on this test. And now I'm not picking on this district. Actually, we work with Ypsilanti. They're amazingly wonderful folks, but their scores are pretty rough, certainly compared to the state average. And in general, if you look at school districts that are economically challenged, they're called low SES, low socioeconomic status. They have very low test scores, and it's really hard. But again, I'm not going to go into it. But we're here to help, because we can take the time the teacher is spending on grading and give it back to the teacher to teach with the kids. So we have an auto grader that's spelled wrong, that does student essays. We're using 3.5 and 4. There is a difference, and we'll talk about that. Now, we keep the teacher in the loop. The MyGPT grader will grade it, but the teacher reviews it before sending it to the kids. Because, right, we are finding that, 1 out of 40 so is wildly wrong. And so the teacher catches it and then fixes it. So I know it's a complicated slide, but bear with me. On the left is that passage about the rhinoceros and the bird, okay? That goes into MyGPT grader. The instructions, what the teacher wants the kids to do, goes into MyGPT grader. And then a third thing called a rubric. Now, this is a key factor. If we don't have a rubric, our program doesn't work. But what teachers do, what the state of Michigan does, is give a set of criteria. If the score is 4 for the student's response, then they meet all those criteria, about 8 or 9 criteria. And then 4, 3, 2, 1. And then also the student's response, what they wrote, goes into MyGPT grader. Out comes an answer. And how do we do it? Well, the standard is prompt engineering, but we're also using various reasoning methods. What's called few-shot learning. We do train the model with some examples, and we do chain of thought reasoning. If this, then this. If this, then that. I won't go into it, but this is how we're using ChatGPT. What are the benefits? Well, the teacher gets timely. They can grade. They save time. The teacher saves time. They get some of the subjectivity out of it, and for the kids, they get timely feedback. The teachers give the kids assignments, but there's so many things for a teacher to do that they don't grade the assignments anymore. Only some of them do they grade, but then the kids don't get any feedback. So why would they do it? Why would they care? We can give the kids feedback on virtually everything they write. So we used to call it Smart Grader. Now we're calling it MyGPT Grader. On the left is our analysis of some of the examples from the M-STEP testing site. On the right is the analysis provided by the M-STEP program. Now, what M-STEP, the state of Michigan, they train a whole bunch of teachers to come up with the same answer, inter-rater reliability issues. So they're very good at consistency. And what we're finding, our analysis with our program, MyGPT Grader, virtually identical. I mean, all the colors, yes, it works. It really does work. Now, again, sometimes it's wildly off, but almost always it's spot on. Now, what are we learning? Well, first off, it works. It works. And one of the comments, one of the teachers said to us, did I write those comments or did it write those comments? It was that good. It had the tone of the teacher in. And another comment was, that was really harsh. The teacher said of the comments made by MyGPT grader. Okay, stuff for us to learn. We can fix the harshness. Absolutely. This is very scary, the costs. Now, literally in the last 2 weeks, OpenAI has redone their cost structure. Thank the Lord, because it was costing 20 cents per analysis to use GPT-4. That's unsustainable. We couldn't scale this if it's 20 cents. Now we're still working. Now there's a whole new cost structure. It's complicated, of course. But it's certainly not going to be 20 cents. But it's still going to cost some money to do that kind of very, very careful analysis. And we're expanding. Besides essays, we're doing what's called reading responses. Instead of, this is an example, you don't have to read it other than it's only 2 or 3 sentences. Every day, a teacher gets the kids to do reading responses. Teachers don't grade it. There's no time. There's also a thing called the super sentence, which is 1 sentence, but it has a bunch of connections. Again, the teacher doesn't grade it. Spelling tests, they still give spelling tests, and by hand, the teachers grade spelling tests. You think that's insane? Well, we're going to fix that. We're going to actually fix that. And then we're moving to math. Oh my God, the amount of math grading the teachers have to do. This is what we're trying to do. Give the teachers back the time and give the children timely results. Everybody needs feedback on what they do. And what we're hoping is that my GPT grader will give the kids timely feedback. Thank you. How did I do?
Amazing. You were also under time. Well,
Whoa!
thank you so much, Brian, Randy, Perry, Elliot. This was amazing. And I'm sure that the commercialization journeys and the stories about how you're scaling this up is very inspiring for a lot of people. So I am going to start moderating the Q&A. I know that Brian, Randy, and Perry have been answering the Q&A, typing out the answers. So one of the questions that's come up, and this is for Elliot, and I think Perry can answer this too. How does my GPT grader or course GPT handle hallucinations?
Well, the way we do it is we keep the teacher in the loop. Before, we do not send the analysis of my GPT grader directly to the students. So there is time that the teacher has to do to read through it. So that's how we're doing it right now. Teacher catches the hallucinations.
And Perry, is there a specific way that you handle hallucinations in Course GPT?
Well, again, the information that we use to create the answers comes from the instructors. So if there are hallucinations, there's a bigger issue. It does not extract any information from the internet. It's only extracting information from what was presented in class or the documents the instructor made available.
We have one question that came in from the registrants, and it's sort of a philosophical question, again, for Perry and Elliot. But how do you think generative AI will change the PhD journey for students or young researchers?
Take it, Elliot.
Thank you, Perry. Profoundly, right? Profoundly. We have now an amazing tool. Take Course GPT 10 years from now. What is that going to look like, right? Holy moly. And that's the tools that the people, students who are going for their PhD will be using. I mean, Google was great. Course GPT, oh my heavens. So yes, I think it'll be a profound change. Today, maybe not so much, but play this out over the next 5-10 years. You got that exponential growth curve, and that's what's happening to AI. We're just down at the bottom. We haven't hit the hockey stick yet. And when we do, strap in.
Yeah, I can only add to that we have weekly meetings thinking about new things coming out with these large language models. And it's like every week my head explodes because even in a week, things change so fast about how we can access beyond text like we're doing, accessing, we've got, the slides you're presenting. We can interpret the images you might have embedded on your slides and be able to point out where that image came from and provide some background on the materials that are being used in the class. So, and can we start generating activities so that actively the students can test themselves? And our system, I maybe didn't mention it, but we generate questions automatically based on what is talked about in class. Now, the quality of those questions is we can still debate, but it's just going to get better. and the capacity, again, to get students to reflect on the material more continuously in shorter bursts, I think pedagogically has been shown to be a good thing to do. So rather than cramming, we can at least promote models of good education to the students who might not otherwise know about it.
Wow.
This is
Can I
another.
make a point? Can I make a
Yes.
point? Following on Perry, this is going to change education. This is not just PhDs. Just follow this out, folks. I mean, is this bigger than the internet? I mean, is this give educators opportunities to do things they literally could never do before? And I think the answer is yes. If I was a superintendent of schools, I would be very nervous now. The last thing superintendents of schools want to hear the word revolution. That's the last word they want to hear. But this kind of material, this kinds of ideas are going to change education.
If I could just jump in with another idea that we're just going to do trade aids here for a bit, but another idea I had is as the system gets set up, let's say at Michigan, and we're able to then keep track over multiple years, we expect to be able to let the student ask a question, and it would answer based on the course you're in or any course you've ever taken. So that, you might ask a question now and it would remind you that, a semester ago, that was covered in this class on February 17th and 13 minutes into the lecture, and take you back to that. Or the medical student who's going through the 1.5 years of training, now they're doing rounds, and now they really need to learn that thing they should have learned back in the courses, and now they can look it up and it'll take them to that moment in the courses they've been in. Or just another wild idea is, if I teach classes in weather, and if my colleagues at other institutions were using the system and we all opted to share, wouldn't it be great to have a system for professional development where I could see how others teach a particular thing, and I would learn from that, particularly young faculty. We're not going to change the old farts, but the young faculty would be able to see how others are teaching particular topics and choose from that how they might use it in their own course.
It's pretty revolutionary. So I have one question just to switch it over to Brian and Randy. Someone asked if you could share your thoughts more on the recent executive order regarding AI, and I know, Randy, you briefly touched on it.
Well, I actually haven't read it. It's lengthy, but I read the parts that are with respect to patents and copyrights, and really there's not much there with respect to that. It's just a charge to those offices to put together recommendations and guidelines. So I think one area where it's going to be particularly helpful would be on subject matter eligibility. It's always a battle in arguing with examiners over what would be subject matter eligible in terms of innovation, and trying to make an allegation of an abstract idea, how to counter that with an argument that it's really a practical application of an abstract idea. So if we can get more guidance on that, it's been 3 or 4 years since the patent office has come out with guidance. And they did include one example specific to training a neural network. So if we can get some more examples and some more guidance in that area, it'd be fantastic.
This is another question for the legal side. So as a layperson watching AI take root, I know many artists and creatives are scared of their unpatented art being corrupted or stolen by AI. It seems like some of those cases for copyright are coming out, but what is the field for having art and writing not being stolen from those who've created it? I guess the question is there any other development in the field that is helping protect these artists?
I think the answer is that these cases that Randy and I were talking about, they're really trying to answer that question of, as a copyright holder, can you prevent somebody from taking your copyrighted work and feeding it into these engine? Is that a use of your copyright, a reproduction of your copyrighted work? And until we have that answer from the courts, it's not going to be very clear what the owners of the works, what rights they have to prevent these AI engines from using or being trained on their works.
And it's not really going to, you're still
Perry,
going to,
this
no one's
is a
going to be able
question
to.
for you.
What was that, Randy?
Oh, Randy, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's not going to prevent, you're still going to be able to protect people from stealing your copyrighted work. It's just a matter of, what degree of transformation has to take place before it becomes a fair use. So, direct copy is probably always going to be, copyright infringement, but, it's just a matter of the gray area of where do you draw the line between what amount of change is required before it becomes transformative and therefore fair use and not a copy.
Perry, is Learning Clues being considered for any other industries? I see this as being a very useful tool for training staff for businesses too.
Excellent question, and very insightful. I think it is too, except the only world I know is higher education. So we started in higher education, and we were working with many higher education and community college systems. I would love to talk to somebody about, it seems to me that this would be great for training in corporations, it'd be good for training in military, it'd be good for training wherever training happens. In fact, if you contact me, we even have a system. If you've got a playlist of YouTube videos, we can set you up in a course of whatever you want to define. But I need some guidance. I mean, if somebody in the audience has that sort of background, I would welcome a conversation.
Yeah, and we'll also be providing the contact info of both Elliot and Perry when we send out the recording. So if anyone wants to reach out to them directly, please feel free to do so. Elliot, the next question is for you. The process diagram that you provided showed a handwritten student answer. Does your program work with handwritten content or solely digitally created content? And if your program does use handwritten content, what sort of OER program do you use?
Right now, we use more digital. The kids are typing. In the past, we've explored doing the OCR ourselves. No, we can't do that. If the kids have got to type it in, because there's too many mistakes that happen, and so I know Mississippi's teaching the kids it's a law that they have to learn cursive because the Declaration of Independence that was written in cursive. Really. So.
Perry, this might be for you. Wouldn't it be better to have your GPT bot ask the students difficult questions instead of having the student just retrieve answers without really doing any thinking?
Oh, that's a good, yes, indeed. I think I mentioned that we do generate questions that the students can answer. And over time, hopefully those questions will get better and better. And the other part of that is that the system I showed you today is in what we call the librarian mode. That is where you ask a question, it's going to give you an answer. I hope I just didn't insult any librarians. But the new version we're working on actually comes back, instead of giving you the answer, it prompts you with a question, and to which you have to answer that. And then there's a back and forth here where we help you build the answer yourself rather than giving you the answer straight up. That's still a research, and we're still in research, but yes, we understand that's a far more powerful way to get students to learn a topic.
Elliot, this is for you, and this might be the last question because we are at time. When using AI in grading open-ended or multidimensional problems, how do you distinguish between simple issues or critical issues or potentially misinterpretations of the problem, especially if you have to take into account the varying backgrounds that students may come from?
Excellent question. Absolutely excellent question. And that's really why we need the rubrics, because the rubrics help us narrow things down. We've explored open-ended without a rubric. It's much more difficult. And no, we're not going to tackle that, at least not right now. So if these are, especially bringing in background, all kinds of stuff. Good question. Talk to me next year. Thank you.
Right. So we are at time. I just want to thank our speakers again, Brian, Randy, Perry, Elliot. This was amazing. We have a lot more questions in the Q&A that we haven't had the time to answer. But we will, we'll have a copy of these, and we'll try to answer some of them when we send out an email with the link to the recording sometime next week. And if you would like to get in touch with Innovation Partnerships about any of the projects that you're working on for help with commercialization or partnering with industry, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.